To preview content in Oracle Content Management, simply select the assets you want to preview from the Assets tab. Click on the dedicated preview button, which opens up a side drawer, and by default, you can view the form view of the asset. Of course, developers can create additional content layouts that are made available through a dedicated dropdown in the top UI. By selecting from that dropdown, we can switch what we call the content layout and get a different view. For example, here would be a view for a hero image and text, or potentially a hero block type of preview. Now let's see how that actually works in practice. So just as we've seen with digital assets, in the Assets tab, we select a particular structured content item, like for example, this hero banner, and click on the preview icon. You'll open up a side drawer where you can actually preview that content item. Of course, by default, we'll be getting the form view, and we can select additional layouts, like for example, the hero image and text, and see how this previews. And of course, we have the possibility of adjusting the viewport as well using the ruler to, for example, a tablet or a mobile, large, medium, or small type of device. Additionally, we can select other layouts, like for example, the hero block, which will render in a different setup, and also do some additional formatting. And of course, we can define additional layouts. So notice that all of the content layouts that we've been listing inside of that dropdown are actually defined at an asset type level. And of course, all of these can be coded to display however we need to. Another alternative, more accurate way of previewing is by sending the actual content feed over to the channel that is used to render it. Now, this could be done through previewing via an external content preview inside of Oracle Content Management. So basically, as a type level, we define within a dedicated section an external preview URL, in this case, a commerce storefront URL, and pass the asset ID as an argument so that in the storefront, this ID can be picked up and used to retrieve the content that needs to be rendered. In the Assets tab, what this will provide contributors is with the ability to actually preview inside of the Assets tab how the content will look in an external channel, like in this case CX Commerce, simply by selecting Commerce in the same dropdown. They will get an inside preview within the same Oracle Content Management UI of how that content will actually render inside of the external channel. And this could be very advantageous if you're using a headless delivery to a React or an Angular application, or simply integrating with other channels and want to preview how the content will look before publishing to that channel. Finally, let's have a look at how we publish content in Oracle Content Management. And bear in mind, this is both applicable for digital assets like images and videos and structured content. So the mechanism is, as you would imagine, simply by selecting assets that you want to publish and clicking on a dedicated Publish Now or Later option in the top toolbar. This will provide you with a side drawer where you could specify the channels where you want to publish, and by default here you will also have the targeted channels. This will also check dependency validation. It will check also all the policies applicable to channels, like, for example, if the content is translated, or if it is approved for that specific channel, and if all the dependencies that are mandatory are approved for a parent asset, for example. And here you also have the possibility of amending the default targeted channels and adding additional channels that you want to publish. So you get a great deal of control in the dependency screen. Once you're happy, you can, for example, schedule the publishing using a publishing job scheduler, and we have a dedicated calendar where you can see publishing jobs, as well as publish immediately using directly the validation screen and clicking on publish. Finally, what this does is it exposes that content to the technology layer inside of the Oracle Content Management, which exposes the content either through use of a REST API or through GraphQL, or for example through webhooks if you're looking for a push mechanism, or simply embedding the assets UI inside of external applications like we do, for example, with Oracle Marketing Cloud. Finally, using any one of these four technologies, we push the content to any number of channels. Now, these could be, emails where you surface images or videos. It could be commerce content like we've seen before with the preview for the product inside of CX Commerce. It could be digital assistants or chatbots, social media, Obviously, the standard typical type of web channels like the website, mobile, wearables, and of course, more advanced content like AR or VR, or potentially integrating with other applications, through the means of GraphQL or REST API or webhooks. Now, let's see how this would actually work in practice. So we're back in the Oracle Content Management UI, and what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to publish this new version of the modern Avellino Sofa. Notice that we have a version already published, which is the major version, version 6, and then we have a minor version, which is 0.3, which is the draft version we're seeing next to the tile. So what we're going to start to do is we're going to start with publishing later, because we're going to want to look at how we schedule. What we do this, we'll get a side drawer opened up, which will give us the same validation screen, plus the extra capability of actually providing a scheduled job name and scheduling that job. For example, we can provide it with a name like scheduled job Avellino. We can set up a date and a specific hour at a specific time zone when we want to publish, and I'll leave this by default, and of course add an additional description. We can, of course, go with the default targeted channels like Alexa, Commerce, CX Service, Facebook, Google Assistant, Instagram responses, and so on, or we can select our own channels out of the overall list of channels. In this case, this is targeted at all the channels, so all we need to do is provide it with validation to make sure that all the dependencies are okay, and we can see that everything is ready for publishing, which means we can just hit schedule, and the publishing job will be scheduled within the Oracle Content Management Server. Now, if we want to check all the content, we can click on Publishing Jobs, either from the dedicated link or from the toolbar, and see that our scheduled job has been put on the calendar. Of course, we can view this at a month or at a day. We can decide, we can filter by jobs completed or failed or just scheduled or hide weekends and so on. Now, in the purpose of this demo, of course, you can open up the job and you can see what content will actually be published within that specific job. And of course, edit and add additional owners to that particular job so that they can also view the scheduled job. Of course, you can also cancel the job directly from the same screen. And perhaps, of course, you may decide to publish the content right away. So in order to do that, same type of process, select the tile, click on Publish, and in this case, Publish Now. Of course, we get the same validation screen, only this time we don't get the prompt of actually scheduling the job, and we have the possibility of also unlocking all the assets that were locked as part of contribution, as part of the publishing session. Now, once we have the publication done, the content is then made available across all the channels. And we can check this very simply by opening up the Properties panel and going to the API Dedicated section. Within the Properties panel, Dedicated tab, and you will see for each of the channels that we have created, there is an endpoint available. Now, if we click on any of those endpoints, we will get an output from the REST API showing how the content is actually delivered in JSON format.